Welcome everybody. As you may have figured out, I'm not Joey Guidry, but we are currently being joined joined with them, and it is such a great pleasure and honor for us to present their work to us in a residency that we are now going into the second event. A lecture on Joey's process as a bassoonist, and specifically how they have dealt with decolonizing their process as a performer. And it will be just a moment before we will start. And I also want to make sure that after this lecture that you attend Joey's recital, which is really going to be quite extraordinary, combining bassoon and electronics, and that's going to be Monday, November 9th at 7:30 p.m. I will be a little bit later posting the link to registration for that concert. I imagine that many of you are already registered, but if not, we will give you that opportunity. But for now, I see that Joey has joined us. Joey, welcome back to Virginia Tech. It is such a pleasure to see you, and thank you so much. The lecture may now commence.
Hello, everyone. Basically, there's a lot to cover today, so let's get right on into it. I'm going to be talking about, firstly, my process of how I've decolonized, well, not completely, but started the process to decolonize all of the racist and basically anti-blackness that's been incorporated into the music pedagogy for my entire training through undergrad and grad school, and even ensembles I play with today. So we're gonna get into that, talk about living and being a musician with mental health and bipolar disorder, and a lot of other things. So it's gonna be really exciting. So yeah, let's do it. I will firstly say, Jesus gave me some talent. Looking into a camera is not one of them. So I'm going to be looking here, and we're going to be with it. So pretty much to begin, I want to start with the history of bassoon. So I'm going to stick with bassoon for a second, but it will relate to other instruments and voice and everything. So my idea with bassoon that is the biggest issue is the idea of tone, and that there is an idea of how to play the bassoon and a job that is mostly respected for bassoon players. So starting with tone, tone is rooted in white supremacy. This is where we're going to start. This is the tone of this presentation. So how that works is basically bassoon is played, well, now it's a lot of women, a lot of non-binary people, Black, East Asian, people of color, so everyone is like really playing the bassoon these days. But when you study bassoon, especially in conservatory, you are shown a lot of musical examples. And a lot of these musical examples are like Sophie Derchelou, Sergio Azzolini, and many other people like Principal of Berlin Phil, Principal of Rotterdam, all of these different people, and they're all white. All of the tone ideas are based off of whiteness all over the world when it comes to bassoon, and it's extremely, extremely frustrating because there should not be one way to sound a bassoon. All of the people I just named do sound different, but they are what set the standard for pretty much all of the education all over the world, and it's extremely disappointing. It completely takes away from representation. It completely takes away from just diversity of sounds, also diversity of skin tone and gender. And pretty much with that, it's I've already said, but it's extremely frustrating. And another issue with that is when, at least I can talk about studying in the States, a lot of professors at these very big name schools are perpetuating that all the time. These are very well connected bassoonists, but they choose to only give examples of people that they respect. I guess I probably shouldn't use that word, but people that they can relate to in sound, people that they essentially think sound great. And these are teachers, like at Juilliard, like Billy Short, Ken Laskowski, then Whitney Crockett, Ted Lurie, all of these teachers, they usually give examples. I mean, I've met all these people and been to their classes. So this is why I'm saying that. And it's really, really frustrating to be told or heard that this is how you should sound on bassoon. That the principal of New York Phil, Judith LeClaire, will be like, this is the music on bassoon that sounds best. And it's like, you should never, there is no hierarchy, firstly. Like, let's just cancel that, you know? There is more to bassoon than playing Figaro. So, how I've had to take that and kind of change it, I have to do my own research, you know? That's the thing when you are Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, non-Black person of color, that you have to go and work 50 times harder because you have to teach yourself all of the things that your quote unquote great school is not teaching you. So the bassoonists that I have started to listen to are my friends and teachers and just other people I just really look up to, like Monica Ellis, Andrew Brady, Lacolian Washington, Francesca Wright, Alex Davis, Dr. Myers Stone, and Kai Rock. You know, these are people that I've played with, I've studied with, and just heard, and they each play so differently, and it's so, so beautiful. But no one really looks at them for the idea of what you could sound like on bassoon. It's kind of like, oh, they're doing well, you know, or this and that, but it's never really taken super serious, and that's extremely disgusting, and it's extremely racist, and it just perpetuates the foundation, growing the foundation of how white supremacy is so integrated into music pedagogy. So with that, you know, students are also not encouraged to play outside of the box when it comes to playing bassoon or other wind instruments. You know, a lot of the time you go to conservatory and you're taught play these scales, play these etudes, and yes, fundamentals, but there's other ways to teach people fundamentals. You can, at least with my students, I'm like, okay, what's your favorite song? A lot of my students are Black, so they love Meg Thee Stallion, they love Cardi B, they love No Name, they love Nerd. And I'm like, okay, pick your favorite song that has a really strong beat and figure out the BPM of that and practice your scales. Okay, now practice your scales halftime with this beat. Practice subdivision. You know, play your scales at a triplet to WAP. You know, like, see how you can do that, because all of these pieces have amazing rhythm in it. And a lot of the times with bassoon, it's like excerpts or die. You know, most are bassoon concerto or put it in the case. And it just continues to create this hierarchy and basically others, all this other type of music. You can have your students play tangos to strengthen their rhythm. You can have your students go be in a rock ensemble to strengthen their rhythm. You can have them go play Afrobeat or just traditional African music, you know, with all this very strong rhythm and Caribbean music. Those can also be used in pedagogy, but it's just choose not to. Like, it's 2020. It's time to completely flip it all on its head, especially everything that's happened this year. And a lot of schools' curriculums are starting to now integrate Blackness into their education. You know, it's been a long time. I guess we're here now. But there's so many other ways to play bassoon. And also with tone, people don't understand with bassoon, firstly, no one's going to sound the same because everyone's mouth is different. Your lips are different. The way your tongue is placed is different. A lot of the way people describe embouchure, tongue placement, the roof of your mouth, move your tongue this way, you know, all of these things. And it's like, it's really quantum. Like, I actually can't see inside your mouth. Like, I actually don't know what you're doing. So it's just kind of crazy that we're still using biology so much to teach these instruments when it's going to be a really personal journey. You could just say, like, okay, watch out for these things and see what works for you. Experiment. You know, for me, raising my tongue here makes my intonation better, but for you, it might not, because raising your tongue could cause other tension, you know? So there's so much going on that is just rooted on the white body. Because most of the people that found it, but got really popular playing bassoon are white people. So there's just also such a divide in bassoon with sound production, even more between white people. You know, there is the European style of playing bassoon, and then there's the American style of playing bassoon. Both are rooted in whiteness. And it's just kind of crazy to me that there is even a divide in that. Of course, there's like a different intonation level, but also some American orchestras, like Boston Symphony, plays at 442 or 443. I'm not exactly sure. And a lot of European orchestras start at 442. The New York Phil plays at 442. You know, so all of these things you could kind of argue it's an intonation thing, but just playing style. And it's like, why not integrate the both? You know, like, Europe is the OG colonizer, and all of the white people in America are usually from Europe. So it's like, I guess, the baby colonizers. But, and it's kind of crazy that they don't see the connection between the two. And that's just like really mind boggling to me that it's become such an issue, especially in the world of oboe. I am not exactly sure where this person was from, but with LA Phil, there was an international oboist that won the LA Phil job, and he had placed on the European style, also with Philadelphia Orchestra, and these people were about to riot. And it's just like, why is this a thing? Like, why is there an American sound? Why is there this sound? What if music, as a lot of white people say, like to transcend race, why are we putting this blockage up on something that you founded also? Like, why not challenge yourself to blend with this tone that you've created, So all of those things really boggle my mind when it starts with bassoon. And with that, with all of that said, how I've kind of taken it in my own way to really start to break apart those things for me and not letting that pressure happen, not forcing myself to listen to those things and let myself have freedom to play bassoon how I want to. Still gotta have stable intonation. Articulation still has to be very crisp or legato, still have to double tongue. All of these things still matter. But what you sound like when you do these things should not truly be judged, as long as whatever ensemble you're playing in, it should still blend. But that doesn't mean assimilate, There should still just be a unified sound of mixing these different tones together and creating a new sound instead of making this like traditional orchestra section sound or traditional chamber group sound. We can push past these things and kind of create new norms, or not even make a norm, just make new different decisions, new choices for people to choose from when they are picking out recordings and things like that. And not necessarily having one sound of a string quartet better than the other. It should just still blend and should still speak to someone as long as like it's in tune and the rhythm is right. People should still have freedom to like different styles of 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 playing. But for me, I have really started to listen to a lot of different styles of music. Like I always have, but now incorporating it into my practice, into my pedagogy, into my students' pedagogy. And with that, I've always noticed who is also not used as an example is like Solange, Nina Simone, Ari Lennox, Lauryn Hill, Zena Rubino's, Nerd, Maxwell, Michael Jackson, Prince, the list Jennifer Hudson, the list goes on and on and on. These are beautiful voices with so many different styles. You can relate any sound to your instrument. If bassoon is supposed to emulate the human voice, then why aren't we relating it to multiple styles of the human voice? And specifically, why are we just straight up not including Black voices in anywhere in music, but especially as in pedagogy? And the answer is white supremacy, of course, but it's just like, wow, you're completely missing out on an entire different sound concept. You're giving up on this whole palette of things, and it's crazy that they don't want to include these voices in pedagogy or just musical examples in general, or even give the respect, but yet they're often stolen from. So with that, just to pick like a couple of people I mentioned, with Solange, Solange just released When I Get Home. Well, I guess 2 years ago now. 2020 has ruined time for everyone. But with Solange, I just love how legato her music is. I just love how smooth it is, but also has a lot of minimalism, and all of these different ways, and just invokes very certain emotions in me when I listen to it. And I really try to play bassoon in that way. And it's like, okay, how smooth can I get my legato? How can I make myself sound ghostly like her voice, but also at the same time still have this very lively energy? And also with, let's go with Jennifer Hudson. That voice is humongous. It does not have an edge to it. She can keep going and going and going, and that's how she became Jennifer Hudson. It's just amazing. And so when I'm pushing my sound, I'm like, okay, girl, you still need control. We can't break the sound, So those are things I have started to incorporate in myself to not just be a one-sided musician, to be multifaceted. I'm from Texas. I listen to country music. Well, not so much anymore, but I used to listen to a lot of country music when I was in high school, and it would essentially be like, okay, country music has that same theme to it. A lot of them, like, you can turn it on, has the same chord structure, all these things, don't, 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 you know. So it's like, okay, if I'm starting a piece and it's supposed to have this familiar feeling to it, you know, how can I incorporate that? And the reason I bring up country music, rock and roll, all of these things, of course, we're talking about whiteness. So let's get into it and how all of these genres are also started by black people, but were completely taken over by white people. How Elvis Presley completely took over the rock and roll scene when he didn't start it. So things like that. And, you know, music created by black people has often been seen as trashy, inferior, less than, you know, in comparison to many other styles of music, but specifically classical music. So that's why in conservatory, people kind of having these hip hop ensembles, and they're like, okay, maybe you don't join that. Maybe you should go practice your Figaro a little more. Maybe you should go practice your Hofner. That was a little messy. But, you know, it's just completely, it's disgusting. It's completely disgusting how just so looked down upon in music school almost anything created by black people really is. And you know how it's really easy to tell it's not seen as the same is because in music history, what style of music do you have to pick an elective for? And what is just put in the normal streamlined classes? What is put in a optional course? You know, so it's just, they're laying out for you that, like, we don't give you this option. You can do it if you want to, but we're not really about to teach this. Like, we're probably, the class isn't going to get filled. Oh, well, now it's canceled. You know, it's just they don't give a chance to teach their students of anything of our people. And if they do, they make it in this very tokenized way. They're going to pick one black composer that we're going to stick on the whole time. And it's just like, okay, bro, like, challenge yourself. If you're so smart, you have this PhD from Harvard in musicology, you only know Brahms? You know, like, how does that make sense? You had all these resources. Because I'm speaking specifically, because I went to Peabody Conservatory, which is a part of Johns Hopkins, huge research school, lots and lots of money to research and to just really explore to your heart's content. And you're telling me that these huge institutions are just, they don't have the resources to implement this into the curriculum. I think they are now because the nation is now suddenly caring about black people. But we'll see tomorrow when this election's over if they actually still care about us. But yeah, so it's just completely asinine to me that it is just so proven that black students, we have to go to the music history classes. We have to go to the music theory classes. We have to go to ear training. And then also, if we want to learn about our music, we have to really go out and seek it ourselves, which, yes, we should be learning about our music. We should have the initiative to learn about our music. It just gets difficult when you have to write this like 8-page paper, go have to practice, go have to go do this rehearsal. And it's like, fuck, like, when do I do this? You know, it just really has to become kind of a secondhand thing for you, which really sucks. And you have to make it a priority in life. What you want to do, you will make a priority. So I and my friends have made it a priority that we are just researching all these different black composers. How do we program them? Who are the living black composers? Who are our friends pretty much that are writing music? Also, I live in Brooklyn. There's a lot of motorcycles outside my house right now, or dirt bikes. We're going to go with it. So, and things like that. And you're just constantly forcing your black students, firstly, to live under all this racism in the music school, from security guards to the rehearsals to the microaggressions. And then you're drowning them in all this work that doesn't represent them. And then if we bring projects of black music, it's like, oh, good for you. You know, like, we're never actually going to incorporate that into the curriculum, but thanks. You know, and it just really, it just is, I hate it. I hate the fact if you want to learn about black music, you have to take an elective. It's great that we would have an entire class just to focus on our music, would sign up with that, not but also, like, it should be just in the curriculum. You know, Julius Eastman should be in the curriculum. George Lewis should be in the curriculum. Montana Roberts should be in the curriculum. You know, it's insane. It's insane that so at this point they haven't really found how our people can be incorporated into the music history curriculum. So also going off of that, with how it's just looked so down upon, and also just like the entitlement that white musicians have, and control of this field. It's I think it was proven the most to me personally. So I'm 25, so I started college when I was 18, and started seeing a lot more things that I never saw in life, because where I grew up in Houston. I personally didn't really go to school with any white people until I got to Peabody. So there was a whole different culture that I never got to experience, and it is why my mental health was intact for most of my life. So when I started getting into contemporary music, which orchestra is very racist. Contemporary music, oh my God, it's so much more racist because they think they're not racist. So they let so many things go. They make so many excuses for all these things. They take their time. They call their ensembles a band. It's not a band. You have to pay taxes. Like, it's not a band. It's an ensemble. It's an ensemble. And a lot of them try to differentiate themselves from orchestra. But one of the biggest things in orchestra that people complain about is the audition process. So you're telling me that you're better than the orchestra, but you only have invite-only auditions? How does that make you better? How is that dismantling white supremacy? If all these ensembles are based off of usually people like International Contemporary Ensemble, they were all based in Oberlin. Conservatories historically do not have a lot of black students, indigenous students, Latinx students. So if you're only basing these ensembles off of people it's going to be pretty white. And then if you just keep moving forward and the ensemble stays the same for all of this time, it's still probably going to be really white. So then if you start inviting people and your whole circle is white, then you're probably only inviting white people. So what's different here? But also going with that, just a lot of composers, a lot of musicians just feel like they're left out or they're other. And it's like, you're still white. You still get a lot of respect for music. Like, let's take a step back here. So what happened in 2018, I'm sure we all remember, was when Kendrick Lamar won the Pulitzer for Damn. Amazing, amazing piece of work. And it was just so incredible. For the first time, hip hop was integrated into the Pulitzer. Now, there's two sides to look at this. It's like, okay, if we're trying to separate ourselves from white supremacy, why are we going for these pretty white-led titles and affirmations and things like that? And it's like, yes, we should not seek white approval, but white people have the bag. And for the white people in this room that don't know what I'm talking about, the bag equals money. We need money. Rent. I could not live in this apartment in Brooklyn if I did not have a paycheck. So you still need not the approval, but we just need the financial support that these institutions have. So with that, there's a quote. Well, when I logged on to Facebook, I saw mostly very positive things, and then I saw a couple white composers personally on my Facebook that were kind of trashing it, and I was like, what? And then I saw this very long Facebook post that had this quote in it, and it said, "Good for him, but I'm not sharing all of your cheers. The Pulitzer Prize is one of the very few areas where contemporary classical music actually enters into the public sphere. If what has happened with the Kennedy Center honors is any indication that the Pulitzer is following the trend." And it's like, firstly, is there something wrong with including black people and black art into this? Also, let's break down contemporary music. Contemporary music isn't just like, okay, I'm going to have my bassoon, I'm going to throw a toaster out the window, and I'm going to twerk on my head in the back. That is not just what new music has to be. It also can just be music of our time. It's why Solange is a contemporary musician. It's why Ari Lennox is a contemporary musician. Contemporary music just means music that is created today, including Kendrick Lamar. So it's just all of this entitlement of just like, this is our space, this is that. It's completely gatekeeping, and it looks like that's why a lot of contemporary ensembles, a lot of orchestras, a lot of arts organizations, if you put the Ku Klux Klan, if you put a Trump rally, and you put, honestly, International Contemporary Ensemble right in the middle, what looks different? Maybe the clothes? Maybe there are some more baggy pants? Maybe there's some camo. But if you look across the board, there's not a lot different going over there. So, and just in contemporary music, there's just so much entitlement. And then when a black person speaks out, it's like, oh, we need to change. But we don't actually change. And it just really proves that even any art that comes out of our mouth, or that we just produce out of our bodies, out of our fingertips, out of our soul, it's still just looked as not as good. I have seen people I know that have doctorates, that have won orchestra jobs, and this like that, and they completely are still put and compared to their white counterparts. I just remember personally, I met this composer through another friend, and they were introducing this other friend was also a bassoonist. They were introducing me to these two supporters of new music, and they said, I'm not gonna say his name, but they said I was X and X level good, and I remember being like, no, I'm Clifton Guidry level good. Like, don't compare me to him. He does different things than me. I do different things to him. We both play contemporary music and we both play bassoon, but don't compare me to him, and especially don't compare me to a white person. So it just is so messed up in all the areas, and you should not compare people to people, because we all are on our own journeys in music, but especially don't do that. So a big thing that is really looked down upon is different fields in music. If you decide to go do contemporary music, you are often seen as someone who can't make an orchestra, doesn't have the discipline. If you want to go do early music, you're seen as you can't play in tune. You want the easy way out. And if we really look at this, there's a lot of orchestra pieces, excerpts that are quite hard to execute. But if you look at actually learning the pedagogy of it, Ravel Piano Concerto is a scale study. Scheherazade is a melody on B minor. Bolero is just a rhythm exercise in the high range, and practicing that. There are some contemporary pieces that I have had to take out a ruler, a calculator. There's math happening. It is very, very hard. Also, microtones. You have to play a microtone, so that you have to know where 0 is to go play a 35 above that. Also, with early music, you have to know where 440 is to actually play at 415 and then stay at 415. Because if you know about the Baroque violin, you have to retune that motherfucker all the time. Oh, the lute, the harpsichord, like, it's so much work that is seen as getting out of things. But I don't know, it seems kind of the opposite if you're playing the same music every season, and at this point you kind of have Mahler 1 memorized. So who is really challenging who during all of this? And another thing that is really looked down upon is musicians that do studio recordings, go play with R&B artists, do film, go play for films and all of these things, or just solo. They were classically trained, but they also do jazz improvisation or improv pretty much with also the artists mentioned above. And the person that I've personally met that has completely inspired me to just do what I want, to take bassoon in the direction that I want to, is Caitlin Edwards. She's a violinist. She's from Alabama. She currently lives in Chicago. You all should hire her. Amazing violinist. But when we first met in Kenya, because we were playing with the Dance Center Kenya Ballet Orchestra, I think soon after that, she got called to play Lion King, and we're the same age. And I was like, bitch, go off. And then more things just started following her, while she also was playing many other classical pieces and recitals and things like that. And she just integrates so many different styles of music into her life, and she still practices her scales. She still practices her articulation and her bow hold and all of these things. And it's just like, Caitlin is working extremely hard. She's working way harder because she is challenging herself in these many different styles of playing and just having to be on. When that recording light comes on, you have to just play. If you're improvising with an artist, especially R&B, a lot of us aren't taught that in school. That's a whole 50 different skills right there, and it's insane that it's just truly looked down upon when you don't want to go play in the Boston Symphony, if you don't want to go play in American Ballet Theater Orchestra, when also the road to get to those places are significantly just many, many, many barriers for people that look like me, for people that are Latinx, for people that are indigenous. A lot of us can't afford to go to pre-college because of institutional racism, because of systematic racism, because of food deserts, because of the prison industrial system. There's a lot of reasons Black and brown indigenous people are low income, and it's not because we don't work hard. It's because the government doesn't want to fund us. They don't want us to have good lives, and it's very clear because look at Flint, Michigan, still doesn't have clean water. So the road to getting to Juilliard for someone that looks like me from someone who is white are very different, very, very different. And generational wealth, I know for bassoon, it was kind of a joke between me and my friends of just how, like, you have to buy a Heckle bassoon. Usually those hoes cost close to, a lot of times, $40,000, probably minimum 32. And a lot of the white people I met that play bassoon, literally their great aunt or uncle will die and there's suddenly $50,000 for them, and they go get a Heckle. That was just not my situation in any way, shape, or form. A lot of us have to go into debt to buy a bassoon. or oboe or a violin, all of these different things. But all of these orchestras are like, we need to add diversity, but black people aren't showing up to audition. Well, we had to jump over 50 hurdles, climb a mountain, do this and that. And it's just like, you think this is an even playing field? Then they start to incorporate these diversity initiatives, but still the beginning is still not there. So some programs have the beginning, but then once you're in high school, they kind of start to drop off. And then when you get to college, they're like, okay, we got you into Juilliard. Okay, now deal with this whole other level of racism that you've never had to deal with before, pretty much. And we're kind of just going to let you go to God. We hope you get the job. We've done our job. And it's like there's just so many gaps. And it's just so colonized to think that everyone has the same opportunities as you, to think everyone has the same financial abilities as you, because music is really based in capitalism. So it's extremely frustrating to see people get praised for winning a job when their parents are also musicians, orchestra musicians, when a lot of my friends come from single parent homes whose parent really didn't have the education to really support, to really understand music. So our parents had to work a job and then come home and work another job and figure out what the hell we're trying to do with our lives. And just be a parent and be a person, trying to figure out how to get us into camps, how to figure out how to do this, having to just learn about this whole new system while still not really having any money to do this. So having to go do a bake sale, have to have a fish fried, host a barbecue to raise all this money. And then when we get there, we're so exhausted because we had to physically practice to get in. You have to practice while the world is showing you how your black life or indigenous life or Latinx life doesn't matter, by having to watch black people be murdered, indigenous people having their land taken away and also be murdered, having many Latinx children locked in cages at the border and also just stolen from their families and now lost, and also just dying basically in captivity. And you have to take all of this stress, all this intergenerational trauma, and still go wake up and play scales and sit next to people in orchestras that are extremely racist to you. So, there's so many things going on at home, in the government, just in the country in general, and we're still expected to just perform. And none of these things are just taken into context, which is just such a problem with how the music system is placed, and pedagogy, expectations, and all of these things. And it's like, can we take a break? Can we just really look at the reality situation? If someone beat me in an audition, that was just meant to be. We're not going to have hard feelings about that unless it was rooted in racism or something. But I tried to beat myself up because it's like, okay, I woke up on the way to the audition. I was probably called a slur on the way there or experienced some microaggression. So I'm angry. I'm distracted. I get into the building checking for the audition. And they're like, wait, are you really here for this? And, it's like, can we just... There's a whole bassoon on my back. I think we can just continue forward. And you have to stay focused through all these things when a lot of times... a lot of white people that go to an audition, they walk in, they might even have a bassoon on their back, and they just assume they're supposed to be there. They're talked to in a completely different way and all of these things. So in many different aspects in music, there's just so much white supremacy just completely rooted in all of it. And it's just such a problem when it comes to pedagogy, when it comes to the systematic structure of music education, when it comes to accessibility. When it comes to hiring processes of orchestras and also teachers at schools, the whole tenure process in a university and an orchestra, so it's just kind of a mess. But getting more into ways to really structure pedagogy, you can use a lot of different styles of music again to show examples to your students on ways to play rhythm, to articulate, to have a really legato sound, how to be extremely full without pushing, all the things I kind of mentioned before. So I'm going to start playing some musical examples that I believe could really be integrated into teaching your children or teaching your students in general better rhythm, better articulation, better just more ideas of tone production and all of these things, and just flow. So the first, let me do this little share. The first song that I have is like a really big song of this summer. And every time I listen to it, I'm just like, wow, Meg Thee Stallion is really that girl. Like the way she can just completely be on top of the beat, not rushing, just in that pocket, still being so strong, but nothing she does is clipped. It doesn't sound it just sounds good, and that's just what I aspire to do when I'm playing something that has a lot of articulation, I don't want it to sound forced. I don't want it to sound like I am struggling. Like she completely owns this. So I'm going to play a little bit of this.
Gobble me, swallow me, drip down inside of me. Quick jump out for you, let it get inside of me. I tell them where to put it, never tell them where I'm about to be. I run down on them before I have a nigga running me. Talk your shit, bite your lip. Ask for a call while you ride that dick. You really ain't never got him fucking for a thing. He already made his mind up before he came. Now get your boots, hang your coat for this wet ass pussy. He bought a phone just for pictures of this wet ass pussy. Pay my two.
So with that example, things that I love about it is that it would show my students, okay, you are riding this wave. You controlled the wave. You know, you were leading the ensemble. Also, you have to prepare to subdivide to go straight into halftime and not lose a beat. To kind of also change the tone quality to get a little softer, to get a little more legato. So those are things I learned from that song. That I think can really be talked about. But a lot of the times people try to steer away from this music when they're teaching because, again, it's seen as inferior. It's seen as too aggressive. It's too raunchy. It's gangster shit, you know? And it's just like, let's stop that shit. That is all rooted in anti-blackness. A lot of time when people tell me they don't like hip-hop, especially if they're white, I'm like, that's probably rooted in racism, you know? So, yes. So that is the first musical example I have. The second is a song by Ari Lennox called Broke featuring JID. And with this one, I really noticed how also accuracy of rhythm and how it is very also in the pocket, the section sung by JID. And it's just so legato. It has so much space. He is also really controlling the time, but really also not rushing, but also not dragging, just also really in the pocket. So there is this one.
Lost a fight, but I'm looking.
Not that.
On to you, it ain't really all about money to me. Chillin' if you're trying to find something to do. Sitting there looking like Sun E. I've been broken, you been broke, your heart been broken. I'm still broken, breaking down weed. I've been hoping, you been hopeless. Help me please, heaven notice me, am I the focus? Somebody show me the rope a dope so I could dodge your demons trying to choke my throat. Her last man was litty, he had loads of dough. He was taller, older, I'm like Amendola. Height trips left open, right? Call me over.
So in that song, there are many different time changes. There's many different style changes in there, and they're so seamless. Of course, you know, it's a studio recording. Who knows if that was all in one take, but I'm sure it could have been. And when you're playing a contemporary piece or an orchestra piece with all these different tempo changes, different time changes, and a lot of them can be like, oh, okay, let me do that. But I really would want myself to glide straight through that. Also, just another piece that isn't really looked at so high because it's either just not known, because a lot of conservatives don't push you to explore R&B music, to explore hip hop, even explore jazz. You would never really know about that, which is just a damn shame. Also, with this next piece written by Julius Eastman, Stay On It, it just invokes so much joy. And I've heard that used before in a lesson or a masterclass. And it's like, listen to, like, you know, think of the second movement of Mahler 1. It's just very like, oh, yes. That's what you should feel here. And it's like, okay, I mean, yes, I agree, but is that the only example you can give me? So also it really shows how an ensemble can just be so in unison, with style, with articulation, and just feeling throughout. And it also just lets you explore many different tone colors and see how you can really fit in a chord. Because with this piece, there's 4 different lines, 4 different harmonies. And you can really just kind of jump around, and it kind of teaches you like, oh, okay, how can I blend here? Okay, if I'm playing lower, how do I not let myself play louder while doing that? So with that, So every time I hear that song, I get so happy. I really do. And with that, it's kind of, we're going to take this a second to go back to what I was talking about earlier of lack of representation in musicology. Julius Eastman was a very forgotten about composer. He went to Curtis Institute, and then he moved to Ithaca to study more on like a post-grad fellowship. And he also had bipolar disorder, which is what I also have. And I never heard of this man until I went to study at Banff in 2018, and George Lewis talked about him a lot. And I was like, who is this person? So I remember looking him up and being like, oh my God, he looks like me. You know, he's also Black. And I read about his story about how he had a really tragic life and a really hard life, and he ended up dying in the village where I went to grad school at Mannes. He died pretty close to that school. And with that, we premiered his second symphony in Alice Tully Hall at the Mannes School of Music in October of 2018. And they asked me to give like the speech about him because tokenism. But I just noticed throughout the entire rehearsal process, the amount of disrespect he was given, the amount people were just not actually trying to learn about him. They just saw like, oh, this piece is all whole notes. Oh, there's just nothing interesting about it. And I'm like, okay, he wrote a bunch of whole notes. Do you practice your long tones? Because what I'm hearing over there is that you cannot sustain your pitch throughout this whole thing. There's a lot of decrescendos. There's a lot of coming from niente, a little hairpin coming down. I heard 14 different intonations happen over there. Why can't you match? Okay, there's 2 English horns playing and they're a soloist and they're in the middle of the orchestra. Why can't I hear them over you? Why do you think that your whole note is more important than the 2 soloists? There is so much to learn from all types of music, but most of those people's comments were rooted in white supremacy and anti-Blackness yet again. So my last example is near and dear to my heart. Being from Houston, being from the dirty South, there is a song out there that resonates with all Black people all over the world. Talking about invoking emotion and also really captivating a room. I hear that a lot. And also they usually often Ravel Piano Concerto, Martha Angerich, playing Ravel Piano Concerto is amazing. Someone else playing rock too, there's like, oh, they just captivate from the first chord and things like that. Well, this song will captivate a lot of people, you hear this in a party and people start running. There can be people in the kitchen, in the bathroom, upstairs, in the garage, down the street. You hear this opening beat and you're like, fuck, it's time to go. It's just time to do it. So this is the last musical example I have.
Your bad jam, make a nigga spend his cash, his last hand, holds round with your passion. They mad jam, you can ride in the jag, with that hand, you can smoke a fire bag, a grass hand, got money, I can flash, and trash hand. I'm a big time a nigga, pull a trigger, I play a hater flipper, go ahead, fill it, I'm like.
So yeah, there has never been a time I haven't heard that song. I've heard it a million times. That a whole room just doesn't go silent. That in that next moment after silence, people are like, oh fuck, like let's do it. And when the beat drops, like everyone just knows what to do, and I love that. And I really try to incorporate that, especially if I'm playing something really, really abstract. It's like, okay, I still need to captivate and people still need to not necessarily jive with it, but really understand what I'm doing and understand that like I'm in control of the space right now. I'm going to give you this musical offering. And I really feel that with Back That Ass Up by Juvenile. He is really giving us a song that will be timeless forever. My great grandkids are still going to hear this and bounce that ass, So that's what I really, truly believe that we can start incorporating into musicology. Now, the other side of that doesn't mean, white people, that you should start over-analyzing and breaking down the theory and harmony behind all these pieces. Because you're essentially looking for errors in the music, and that is not comfortable. I don't even feel comfortable when they're doing that to like Liszt. Liszt said what he said. If he used a parallel fifth, or just had an extreme octave because his hands were as big as my dreams, so he could do that. So I just don't really. What are we really proving here? Like, why can't we just study it and be like, oh, this is how he did this instead of like this was wrong? Why do you get to decide that? So with that, jumping into the next section of also with tone production, different musical styles, I will also say I definitely will not be done by 5 o'clock. This is definitely going to run over. But no orchestral instrument only should sound like how they do in track 4. There is many, many, many different voices in the bassoon, and I've had to kind of pull them out myself. But there's many composers that some are in this virtual space that we should be listening to, because they also use these instruments in such a different way. They really challenge you to break out of that mold of playing the second movement of Mozart Bassoon Concerto. And these composers, I've met personally and worked with them, love them extremely dearly. And you'll get to hear them, some of them, on my recital on Monday. But the composers that I feel that really take, specifically bassoon, but I've heard many other instruments out of the Western context, or even just the music out of the Western context, are like George Lewis, Martina Roberts, Lisa E. Harris, Nick Dunstan, Julius Eastman, Jesse Cox, Edgar Guzman, and Olivia Short. These are just amazing, fucking ridiculous composers that are often just not looked at as highly. There's a lot of times that a Black composer could have an entire Pulitzer, could have a Guggenheim, and they'll still attach the title of rising artist or emerging composer when these people are like 40. No, they're not emerging. You just heard about them. They've been here the whole time. So those are just pretty much all of the things in music that I believe we need to break down and also start to integrate more into the arts, and also just music pedagogy. It's so important to break apart the anti-Blackness, the institutionalized racism, the level of capitalism that is really integrated into music schools, but also the music industry, specifically classical and contemporary. So moving on to the complete next section of this is really talking about my personal practice and decolonizing in a different way. So with that, I really try not to beat myself up for not being productive. Also, what does productive mean? Give me 1 second. Have to hydrate out here. And just letting myself rest. Grind culture is also rooted in capitalism, which is rooted in white supremacy. So, and just remembering that there are 24 hours in a day. If I wake up and I want to watch Great British Bake Off because there's an election going on and it's stressing me the fuck out, I don't have to force myself to do a form of escapism that does not serve me. It does not make me happy in this moment. So if it's 7 o'clock and I have energy now, I'm going to probably put an hour or two in because now I can focus. But also going on the other side of that, we don't have the same 24 hours. And that's used a lot in schools, really training programs, any kind of job. And it's really, really toxic to make people believe that, because people have work, mental health issues, childcare they have to figure out, or just raising their child while they're juggling all these different things, and personal struggles. And people are taught a lot that you are in competition with everyone. And the whole phrase of like, if you're not practicing, someone else is working harder than you right now, so go practice. And it's like, what the fuck, bro? Like, can I rest, please? I'm really tired. So when you're actually just in competition with yourself throughout most practices in life, if you are constantly comparing yourself to other people or trying to do what this person wants to do or this one person wants to do, what can you do? You don't know what you can do because you've been looking at other people. And it's hard to judge someone for that, because that is just how the system has been in place. That's what we are trained with, these mindsets in conservatory. And that's why people are stressed out, really develop some disorders in conservatory, because it's just this stressful, very toxic environment that people don't get to rest. So going with that, also with professionalism, is really extended straight from white supremacy. Also, it's really ingrained into capitalism, but mostly it's really integrated in assimilation. It's very inaccessible. It's why code switching is essentially here. Code switching is like, essentially like, I'm talking like this, and you know, I've been saying like bitch, hoe, like all this kind of shit. And when I go to work or school, it's really kind of just ingrained to me to be like, hello, like, how are you? Yeah, how have you been doing today? You want to get some bubble tea? You know, and it's so ingrained because it's kind of had a way, it's a survival technique. And it's a way that we have really, by we, I mean Black, Indigenous, people of color, but specifically Black people, we have been taught to have to do this to get a job, to assimilate to whiteness, the white voice, the calm, not being aggressive. Because I talk like this and it's kind of loud. If I'm in a room with other Black people and we're talking like this, people think we're about to fight or some shit like that. So it is just really shitty that we've had to literally learn how to do this to survive, literally survive. If you are being confronted by the police, you have to talk like this. And it's like, hello, officer, like, what is the problem? Like, I'm so sorry, was I speeding? And they still probably will murder me, or people that look like me. So it's inaccessible. Professionalism is inaccessible in a way because it also determines hairstyle. It determines the way you dress. Firstly, everyone's hair is professional unless you're a white person with dreads. Cut that shit off. We're not doing that. That's appropriation. Or cornrows or any black protective style is not for you. Your hair will fall out. That is just a general warning. And it's inaccessible in a way of like, you have to wear a suit, you have to wear a vest, women have to wear this and that, and it's just like, who can afford that? A lot of times if you get a job, you have to like afford this uniform or go afford some suit and shoes, and it's like, are you giving me a stipend to do that? Like, who is paying for this shit? So it is just such an issue. Also, people with professionalism do not allow people to wear gender affirming clothes. Or even traditional garments. It's just like, you just have to assimilate to the structure of the gender binary. You have to assimilate to whiteness in every possible way, really. And it's really, really fucked up. So what I have learned and was just super, super inspired by was by Katie Brown and Delaney Harris from the Classically Black podcast. We hosted them at the Manhattan School of Music about, I think, a month ago now. And we were talking about AVE, and Katie said something that I was like, oh shit, like, I don't know how that never came up for me. And the way that she said, I've essentially stopped code switching because I feel like I can explain things better when I'm not trying to speak a different language. And she says in studio class and shit that she just talks how she talks, and things can get clear. It's not completely the same, but you're kind of translating. And I've heard a lot from my friends that are bilingual who say, they hear something and they're like actively translating in their head and sometimes get confused, all of these things. And it's just so frustrating that you have to do that and assimilate to just speak this way. Because sometimes if someone doesn't speak the same language as you, that has happened before in ensembles I've played in or some orchestras or a pianist. And it's like, okay, we may not speak the same language, but if I play something and it's like I play a little faster, I probably want to cello rondo. Or if I draw a picture, pictures are universal. That's why signs exist. If it's a circle with a red slash in between it, it probably means don't enter, or look ahead or something like that. If it's a yellow triangle, it usually means yield, probably all over the world. So I really, really was inspired by her saying that. And I was like, I need to do that. So I started doing it. And with that said, also plug, go check out the Classically Black podcast. You can find them on Instagram, on I think Spotify, definitely Apple Podcast. And they have a new website, classicallyblackpodcast.com. So definitely go check them out. Also book them and pay them. So with that, also jumping into something I love to talk about a lot, and it's a paper I've been working on for a long time. It's called The Wagon Does Not Exist. It kind of goes back to not beating myself up. There is no wagon. The wagon, essentially, when people say, I have to get back on the wagon, I fell off. It's just that simple. So with that, it's essentially saying, oh, I didn't practice for a week or a month. Now I have to practice 20 hours out of the 24 hours that we have in a day. Because I need to get back on it. I need to do this. I have to build my progress back up. And it's kind of like, okay, you may have made some really good progress for these 6 months and you took a week off. Guess what, girl? Like, that's not going to go away. Because you haven't just playing your instrument for 6 months. You've been playing it for years. If you're my age, you've been probably playing for like close to anywhere from 20 to 10 years. So it just really teaches you that it's also just rooted in so much capitalism that you feel like you can't take a break because you have to work, you have to work, you have to grind, or you can't pay bills. And it just really sucks that way because music is such a beautiful thing. And it's just like, okay, you have to force yourself, get stressed out, and now like you're having terrible performances because you're completely exhausted. You skipped meals because you need to go learn the Shostakovich concerto, and it really sucks. You have to go make all these reads, and it's essentially, exactly, a week break doesn't erase a decade of practice. You need to take breaks. And also going back with that same quote, someone is always practicing when you're not, so you're missing out. And it's just like, why would you tell someone that? You just don't know what people are going through. So people, take breaks. Absolutely just take breaks. It's okay. Especially in 2020, there is so much trauma that we are all experiencing, especially Black people, Indigenous people, and non-Black people of color. We all are experiencing trauma right now. We're experiencing trauma waiting for goddamn Nevada to figure out what the fuck is going on over there. So, it is just, there's a lot of trauma going on today. Especially this year, and especially generational trauma. And the last thing I want to talk about is being a musician with bipolar disorder. And how I've had to completely break apart pretty much everything I was taught about playing the bassoon, and not necessarily playing bassoon, but listening to my body more, giving myself breaks, and how I practice bassoon. So essentially with bipolar disorder, I have type 2. So I have a very big high that could last for me, like 3 to 4 days, where I am on the biggest sugar high I've ever had in my life. I'm in a very, very extremely deep depression where I'm debilitated and I'm not getting in my bed. And people look at me and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. Thank you, though." And with that, it's hard to practice between both of those things. And you can kind of tell when it's coming, because sometimes you have like this, how people with seizures have like an aura. You can kind of feel something similar like that, where it's something in your stomach and you're like, "Ooh, I'm about to really be manic." Or my friends have gotten to know the point now, I usually talk like this, pretty chilled out, but if I'm like, "Hey girl, like, what are you doing? Like, how is this? How are you?" They're like, "Okay, Joey's in the episode," and it's people have given me that freedom, to really try to grab a hold of something that I probably will never have complete control of. So with that, in the music industry, it's really, and education, you're not really seen as like disabled. So you don't really get any accommodations with that. And if you're debilitated and barely can get out of your bed because you're thinking about keeping yourself alive and trying to eat, how do you expect a student to go to class? How do you even expect someone to get out of their house? People don't truly understand or have sympathy for this, because a lot of people still think mental health doesn't reflect your physical health. So with that, I personally just give myself space, and I've told teachers, like, look, I can come to your class and sit here, but guess what? I'm still not learning shit. Like, what is the point? You just want to see me. You want to see me staring at you. What? We're not getting anywhere with this. So I've learned to also just give myself different practice schedules. I've had to learn to sometimes fit a lot of music into a very short amount of time, because I have had a really rough couple weeks or something like that. So essentially, if it's 9 p.m., I live in a place where I can practice pretty much any time of the day, which is a blessing. But if it's 9 p.m. and I'm like, okay, it's here, I'm not manic, I'm really focused, go give me 30 minutes to an hour on this and really focus, really, really just focus. And sometimes you can really learn a whole piece that way. I don't encourage everyone to do that. If you have time to practice, please use the time you have. But doing that, and then also if I'm practicing and I notice I'm really manic, I'm not going to keep going, because I'm going to just ingrain bad mistakes. I'm not actually paying attention. I low-key think I sound lit, and I listen to a recording and I'm like, "Bitch, what the fuck was that?" It's difficult. You have to give yourself space. You're dealing with something that you don't actually know what it is. Bipolar disorder really evolves with time. It has gotten worse since 2017 when I found out, but also medication has helped me dramatically. So with that, I have to also give myself space for forgiveness. If I miss an opportunity for something that's in my brain that I did not control, it just kind of go with my life. Well, fuck, like, I'm not going to beat myself up for that. I'm going to actually enjoy it more. I'm going to try to find the moments where, like, are kind of funny. Like, it's a big joke with people with bipolar disorder. You can always find them organizing their closet at 2 a.m. And, probably shouldn't say that, but it's actually very accurate. My friends have called me and it's really late. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm organizing my shoes." Or I took apart my whole dresser. I just want to move it over here. Those are just very common things. So I give myself forgiveness if, like, I'm practicing, but, like, I need to go clean the kitchen right now. Like, I have to, or I cannot go to sleep. I can't have clothes on my floor. I have to pick them all up. It has to be very neat in my room all the time. So I've just learned these things about myself, and I've had to adapt it to music. So a big dream of mine is to get mental health better in schools, to get students true accommodation, because if they're arrested, they're probably going to play better and not have just stress in general with those things. So it's a lot of these things that can really be incorporated into music that are really important. The last thing I would say mostly is that you don't have to continue in school. You do not have to continue going into debt or stressing yourself out because you feel like the quote unquote real world, whatever they want to call it, is too scary. So you feel like, "Oh, I have to get this degree. I have to get this degree." And it's like, sometimes you just need rest. And with that, I would say that, like, I started at Manhattan School of Music this fall. I was really excited. I really want to stay in New York. Going to Manus was really great for me. And I got into their contemporary program. I was super excited. Had a teacher of my dreams. And I've had, like, good success these last couple months. So I was like, okay, I'm actually really, really busy now. So it was a tough decision, but I actually decided to drop out of grad school, just completely withdraw, not going back, taking a year or two off, and I'm gonna just have this gap year, try new things. And it's just, I'm really happy for that, because I'm also really happy and blessed for the friends I've had to support me with that. But it's just teaching myself, like, you do not have to entrench yourself in this very white structured education where they're not going to cater to you. There are many, many things going on with Black people right now, and the school is still expecting me to show up to this rehearsal today, and it's like, no, I need to rest. I am physically exhausted right now. Like, there is just no way this is happening. So I have just really had to learn these things about myself, and you have to learn to give things that serve you, which goes into this last part of radical self-love in music. You have to be honest with yourself. Self-love or self-care, people say like, oh, you have to stay in bed when you stay in bed. Give yourself some orange juice if you want to do orange juice. That is true. But you also have to look at the big picture sometimes and think like, okay, I just brushed my teeth. If I drink this orange juice, I might throw up. So how that relates to music is pretty much like, okay, I have bipolar disorder. This bitch ain't going nowhere. So what do I need to do to make sure my life is just not stressful? So when I do need to rest, or if I am in an episode, like my life isn't ruined and I can still get the bag, is I do not show up unprepared. I practice my ass off when I can practice. You know, like you have to set yourself up for success. Or you will fail because you already have something in your head that wants you to fail. The system wants you to fail. You know, everyone wants you to fail, essentially, except for your inner circle and your community. But those are things that I've had to learn about myself and just really give myself the space to also really stand up for myself. If someone is kind of trying to pressure me into doing things in music that I know I'm not comfortable with, or if I know I'm kind of in an episode and they're like, can you show up here, or can you do this? Learning to say no. Learning to having to learn how to problem solve and like unfortunately stay calm. And all of these things have to learn so many other skills because I have this disorder that makes my life quite difficult. Which also goes into there's no such thing as high functioning, because just in front of you, it looks like I am doing all the shit. I'm in my bed crying at 2 a.m. You know, and it's just the nature of the thing. You have to cover this all up during the day, and it's extremely difficult all the time. And sometimes the bitch just needs to go to sleep. So in order for me to just go to sleep and not ruin my life, I just completely try to handle everything that happens. And that's what I tell my students who also experience mental health issues or have trauma or grief. Firstly, direct them straight to therapy. But secondly, it's just like, let's do everything possible to set you up for success. So let's make a plan on how you can practice even 30 minutes a day and still get some really good things done. And also accommodating to them. If they're in an episode or something, or just going through something tough at home, I'm not about to keep assigning you 50, well, not really, but I assign like 2 etudes a week. And if that, I'm like, how about the goal is 1 etude. If you learn half the etude and it's bomb as fuck, that is amazing. That showed me you know how to time manage. You know how to be honest with yourself. You know how to protect your boundaries. And that's going to lead to a pretty good life, I would say. So it's really, I've just learned a lot from all of these things. And essentially, with everything that's going on in the world right now, I would say what everyone can do, specifically the white people in this room and non-Black people of color. A lot of people did the Black Lives Matter square on, I think in June. It was like a Tuesday, Blackout Tuesday. That didn't mean shit. Sharing everything on your Instagram, awesome. But if you don't put your money where your mouth is, literally pay reparations, literally go fund grassroots organizations, grassroots activism. But you go to protest and put a picture on Instagram and be like #BLM. Don't put a picture. No one has to know you were there. Move in silence. Move in silence. The way to let people know you're a part of a movement of protecting Black people, also Black musicians, Black artists, just be there. Shut up and listen, or speak up when you see someone being treated badly, specifically a Black person, Black queer, Black trans people, Indigenous people, Latinx people, you know, people that speak a foreign language and they're getting yelled at by some white person. So all of these things are just so important, especially in the world. And also in music. Correct yourselves. If you see these arts organizations that were putting out all these statements that were very rushed and very terrible, specifically 8 Blackbirds, that shit was terrible. Go look at it as an example of what not to do. But yeah, just really speak out against these things. If you see things happening in a rehearsal, a lot of times, if you're white and you speak up, guess who's not probably going to be fired? If I speak up, guess who's going to be right out the door? So, you know, all of these things, you really have to stand up, because the big thing right now that everyone I know that looks like me, or the person of color that's talking about right now, it's like, after this election, y'all are going to throw us away. These organizations do not actually care. They're not going to care, because they have never actually cared, but it's a publicity stunt at this point. So prove us wrong. The expectations are not high, but what can you do? That's what you should ask yourself. How can you decolonize music? How can you make a path wider for more Black students, for more for more students that are non-Black POC, for more students who English is not their first language, for more students that are disabled, for more students that have mental health issues, for more students that have a broken home, for more students that don't have any strong economic background. You know, what can you do to make yourself decolonize and act and be an activist in very intersectional ways? What can you do to take out the internalized white supremacy you have? And that goes for white men, and that goes for white women, that goes for white queer people, that goes for white trans people, that goes for whiteness overall. All of you have internalized racism, and it's time that you realize that your gender or sexuality does not take away from the internalized racism you have, or your racist history. So it's all of these things. You need to ask yourself, what can I do to make it better? Organize, but do not center yourself. Do not ever find yourself saying, well, I did this today and blah, blah, blah. Unless you're kind of like, I took the steps here. This is how you do it. This is how I did it. Okay, cool. Boom, bam, let's do it. But don't make this as about you, because it's never been about you. The only thing that's about you is how like you're actively destroying our life. And it's the way that this election, let's talk about it. This election should not be this damn close. But it just goes to show you that this man can go and do everything he did, and white people are still supporting him. So that should just show you how much white supremacy is really, really rooted into this culture. So into this country, into the world. Anti-Blackness is global. So it's always really good to remember those things. So that's what I leave you with today, is to really ask yourself, what can I do to decolonize music? What can I do to make my neighborhood safer for Black and brown, Indigenous, and non-Black POC? What can I do to just truly alleviate the stress off of people that are melanated, especially Black people? You know, what can I do? There has been a study that inflammation can cause you to die early. A lot of Black people, when you experience racism, your body becomes inflamed, which leads to a lot of Black people dying of heart disease and heart attacks at like 65. So what can you do to make sure that shit don't happen no more? So because decolonization should just not be on the backs of Black people. Even though we have to often fix y'all's mistakes, make it not happen so much anymore. Let us be free. Let me just go to rehearsal and get the focus on whatever I have to play. Let me not have to think about, okay, I really have a problem right now with the person next to me, or I'm not really understanding what this conductor is saying, and let me be able to raise my hand and be able to say what I need to say without being seen as aggressive, disruptive, ghetto, like all this shit, and let me be able to speak in AAVE, which I usually do. So, yeah, fix it. You caused the problem, so fix it. So, and that's what I leave you on today. Be blessed. And if there are any questions, please drop them, I guess, in the Q&A or the chat. I see a couple. For Julian, I was talking about Montana Roberts, and then the Q&A. Why do you think, sorry. Why do you think that it is that even when white people want to make change to decolonize, that it doesn't work? What can we do better or differently today? And you know why I can answer that? Because I'm getting paid. So essentially what you can do better is essentially what I was saying is do not center yourself. Do not make your emotions get in the middle of this. If you fuck up, you can try to do the right thing and fuck up. That's why good intentions doesn't mean a good result. You can have good intentions and really hurt someone. So it's really good to remember that. Make sure that you don't make it about you, that you're looking at the bigger picture. That when a really important thing, if you see someone in college being racist or made a mistake or anything like that, and someone's, or did a microaggression, which is all rooted in racism, but and they're like, oh, well, they're just young, they're 19, they're a kid, they're a boy, or a girl, or any of these things, and they kind of baby them. Just always remember this: Tamir Rice was 12 years old, had a toy gun, and was murdered. So remember these things. And for Beth, what made me choose bassoon as a young person? So I kind of have an interesting story with bassoon. I actually started bassoon when I was 18. I played saxophone, and then I switched to bassoon the summer before I started university, and I did Stephen F. Austin State University for a year. I went there and essentially learned bassoon over the summer, learned bassoon in a year, just kind of tried to fit 7 years of bassoon playing into 2 semesters. And then I decided I do not want to go here anymore. And I saw what conservatory was, and I think, like, I can do that. And it was really difficult, it was really stressful, but I ended up getting into Peabody, so I decided to go there. And I've been playing bassoon ever since. And I would say if you want to keep in touch with me, you can follow me on the gram, and you can find me on Instagram at joe_away. And I put that into the chat. You can also go to my website and shoot me an email, and we can continue this conversation. But yeah, usually not for free. But yeah, we can always continue this conversation. I do a lot of talks like this. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and it's been a pleasure. I think, yeah, that's all the questions I have, but it's been great. I would say please, yeah, if you have time, come to the recital on Monday and just speak briefly about that. The recital is 2 pieces of mine and 4 pieces by my friends. Olivia Short wrote this piece about Grace Jones, and it's essentially a very body positive piece. She gave me the space to make a script and improv on top of it, and it was a really beautiful time about self-love. The other piece, Edgar Guzman, is an electronic piece basically based off of the harmonics of low B flat and a drone. It's very fun. That's going to open the concert. It has so much energy. It is very difficult, and I love it. I just love how much he pushes you to, like, kind of giving an impossible piece in a way, and the way, like, you can play it. But some of the techniques he asks is kind of hard to make it consistent. And you have to improv. You have to be on. You have to go with the flow, be in the moment. And I love when people teach me how to be in the moment more, because that is one of the most difficult things to do in life. And then Jesse Cox, one of my just really good friends, he wrote this piece for solo bassoon based off of African rhythms, African folk songs. And it straight up is one of the most intimidating pieces I've ever played. And he has walked with me every step of the way to just make this piece super accessible for me, and not be so intimidated by the score. It's a very, very beautiful score, but there's a lot going on in that score. And he really, really challenged me with this piece, and also to live in the moment and to be free. And if, like, there's something coming up and you're like, okay, I don't know if we're going to get this out today, to kind of just change in the moment and go with it. He is super okay if no performance of that is ever the same. So we played that, and then we also love to improv together, because Jesse Cox is a composer and drummer. Olivia Short is a composer and saxophonist, and very involved in theater and sound design and arts administration. And Edgar Guzman is a composer based in Mexico, who is also a composer and writes a lot of experimental electronic work. Olivia is based in Toronto, and Jesse Cox goes to Columbia University in New York, but is currently residing in Sweden since Corona. But yeah, so it's all these pieces, and me and Jesse love to improv together. So we took the themes of the solo piece and improved on top of it, and it was so fun while he was in Sweden. So technology. The last 2 pieces are mine, and one is a film called 2:19 a.m. and it is a piece. It's a film that me and my cousin Alex Broussard, who is a videographer, works at PBS and NPR in Houston, is just amazing. And we shot this film basically to represent all of the very tough things my body goes through when I'm in an episode, and what I look like behind closed doors at 2:19 a.m. and just, like, kind of struggling, don't really know how to ask for help, don't really know how to reach out, and all these things, because it's been very known that if you tell someone, like, oh, I feel suicidal today, people immediately freak out and want to call 911. They want to get you help. They want to do that. And it's like, no, can you just listen to me? A lot of people might be alive if they were allowed to express when they were suicidal. And they were allowed to just speak about it. Because a lot of times, from the people I've worked with, when they're going through it, and also myself, once you say, like, that very tough thing out loud, you're like, oh shit, hold up, no. I kind of like breathing. And it was really fun. It's very challenging work. And it's a short film that we made, and I wrote the music for, and just singing and things like that. And it was really, really fun. And the other piece I wrote is called How to Breathe While Dying. It is an ensemble piece and also a solo bassoon piece. So it's 2 pre-recorded bassoons to start, and me soloing or playing a trio with myself. And then electronics, and then, like, 12 bassoons at the end, 12 pre-recorded Joeys. And it's really fun. And that piece is essentially about living with bipolar disorder, and also being Black in this country, and also being non-binary, and have to deal with so many different facets of issues in this world. But also the beauty of my life, the beauty of being Black, the beauty of being Black and queer, the beauty of being Black, queer, and non-binary, you know, and having the freedom and the privilege to be an artist in this country, or just on earth in general. So with that, it's just a piece that has some very aggressive playing and moments of just, like, bliss and things like that, because it's like how to breathe while dying. How can I learn how to enjoy my life while dealing with all these other things and still validate the trauma I'm experiencing? It really going radical self-love, giving myself the tough love when I need, and giving myself and my inner child the motherly care that I deserve. So yeah, that's gonna be the recital. I think it's gonna be really exciting. Monday at 7:30. It'll be a stream. Register. You can find the link on my bio on Instagram. It's also I think on Virginia Tech's information. But yeah, I'm extremely happy to share this musical offering with each of you, and thank you, and be blessed.